Today we're going to cover chapter 6 and we are going to give you an introduction about the skeletal system and bone tissue. This class will be divided in three main sections. So first we will talk about the function and the structure of bones. Uh, so let's start with the first section and we're going to start talking about the function and the structures of bones. So when we talk about bones, we have this in our imagination, different long bones, especially where the one that are in red, those long bones are the one that we remember the most. However, a bone, if we understand a bone as an organ, is not only made of one tissue, it's the interaction of multiple tissues. And for example, inside of the bones, especially in the long bones, you're going to have a the red and the yellow bone marrow, so their blood cells will originate from there, and also you will have adipose tissue there. Your bones are surrounded by connective tissue, and if you unfortunately have break one of your arms or your leg, you know that that is very painful. So bones are innervated by the nervous system, and this is why it's so painful. Okay, so I told you that the bone, or a bone, is an organ made up of several different tissues that are working together. And I told you five that in addition to bones and cartilage, you're going to have dense connective tissue, and we're going to talk about some of those. We're going to talk about the adipose tissue that is located, that is stored inside of some bones. Yeah, there is a source of storage for energy, and also the nervous tissue. And the entire framework of bones under cartilage is known as the skeletal system. Okay, so now that we have this little introduction about okay, what is a bone, and that we know that there is an interaction of different tissues, now we're going to move into the functions of the bone tissue. So here in this schematic, you can see six functions of the bone tissue. In the first one, you can see that bones protect the internal organs. So here you can see that the brain, is surrounded by the skull, and there is other structure, but the bones are very important to protect the brain. In addition, the ribs are also protecting our internal organs, so that is a very important function of the bones. The second one, important function of the bones, is the energy storage. So as I said before, inside of the bones here, we will cover that in more detail. You have the yellow bone marrow. Yeah, so that there you have different type of triglycerides that are very important. If you need energy, you can storage there and then release it when it's needed. Okay, so that was the second. Now we're going to move into the third one. So you remember that I told you the yellow bone marrow. Now we have also the red bone marrow that is going to be important, and the red bone marrow is important because again it's inside of specific bones, and it allows the production of blood cells. Yeah, so red blood cells are produced there. Okay, so we talk about protection, storage of fat, and production of cells. Now the fourth function of bones is the mineral storage and homeostasis of these minerals. So there are two main minerals that are storage there. That the first one here, you can see it in green, is calcium. Yeah, so here in this diagram, calcium is very important. That is in all the bones, and also phosphorus is also storage, and when it's needed, you can break. We will talk about how bones are remodeled and how you can remove some of those the calcium from that storage. Okay, now let's move to the fifth one. That is, I think this is one of the easiest one. That is that bones are helping us to facilitate movement. So remember, later we will talk that the main function of muscles is to pull on bones using tendons, using ligaments, all these structures that are very important. and the connective tissue. But yeah, so bones are important to facilitate movement. And finally, the last function is that bones are important for support of the body. So when we're standing, we do it because the bones are helping us to make this strong support. Yeah, and and there are more functions of bones, but with this six, if I think we have enough functions. So remember, first one, protection of internal organs. Second one, energy storage. And remember, you have these triglycerides in the adipose tissue. And remember these, take notes of this one, yellow bone marrow, that it will be very important, and we will talk in the lecture about it. The third one, it will be the production of blood cells, that is also called here hematopoiesis. And that is the production of blood cells in the red bone marrow. The fourth one is the mineral storage and homeostasis, and we talk about two main molecules, that it was calcium, sorry, two main elements, that it was calcium and phosphorus. The fifth one, the aided movement, that in conjunction with the skeletal muscle, they allow the movement. And the sixth one, that is the easiest one, that is the support of the body. Now we're going to move into the structure of the bone, and we're going to focus in particular in long bones, and we're going to describe several parts. Here you can see the first one, that is the diaphysis, that goes from here to here, that is the longest section of the bone. You can also see here in the ends, here you see the proximal, here you see the distal epiphysis, yeah, that are the ends of the bones where the joints are going to be located. And in addition to those two that I told you, yeah, so here it will be one, and this one will be two, the epiphysis. They are other five structures that we're going to discuss. In the following slides, I'm going to show you with more schematics, but let's list the first seven. So I already told you about the diaphysis, that is the bone shaft. I also told you there is two epiphyses that are located at the ends of bones, at the joints. The third one is that there is two metaphyses, and they will be located, let's put it here. So this one will be located in between the diaphysis and the epiphysis. The fourth one, let me change to a different color so it's easier, is the articular cartilage. So the articular cartilage is covering both epiphyses. So you will find cartilage here, and we will talk more about that. In addition to that, we also have the periosteum, that is connective tissue. Peri, that's around. Yeah, so it's just around the bone. So here it will surround the diaphysis. So it will be here surrounding this region. You will have connective tissue. The sixth one that we will discuss is the medullary cavity. Yeah, so the medullary cavity will be the space within the diaphysis. So here, if you make a transverse core cut, or we see this using a transverse or a columnar plate, you will see that here there is a hole. Yeah, so yeah, and we will talk about those holes. And finally, we will talk about the endosteum, that is a thin lining of the medullary cavity. So here you will find a specific tissue surrounding here, okay, surrounding all this hollow structure. And this is just from a very general perspective. Now we're going to talk in more detail with prettier schematics in the following slides. So finally, here, this is an exercise for you to practice. I want that you use this schematic that your textbook offer you. to try to locate the different seven parts of the bones. And I will answer the question in a few seconds. You can stop the video, and and when you're ready, you can continue with the video. So pretty easy. The first section, I know you see it, is the diaphysis that is there. The second one that is pretty easy too, that is the epiphysis in both sides. Here your textbook show you very clear where is the metaphysis. Metaphysis here in the two other sections. And finally here you have the fourth one, that is the articular cartilage that is located surrounding both sections, the both epiphysis. Here you can see very clear where is the periosteum, and in the periosteum, your textbook, you will make an effort trying to, that if you pale the bone, yeah, the structure, you can see that the periosteum is above, yeah, it's surrounding the diaphysis. Here also your book show you where is the medullary cavity, yeah, and here you can see it much clearer that is in this section inside. Now we're finished with the last section, that is the osteum. And in your diagram of the textbook, you can see it here and similar to the periosteum. So if you see, they show like this layer that you have to peel, yeah, similar to the periosteum. So while the periosteum was covering, surrounding the diaphysis, then the osteum is surrounding the medullary cavity. So this is why your textbook is like showing you a structure that you have to peel, because it's covering that. Okay, I hope that that is clear. Now we're going to divide even in more detail some of those structures that these seven structures that we just discussed. Now we are going to give a small jump, and we are going to talk about the histology. We're going to start talking about the difference between the spongy and the compact bone that are again related to the function and the structure of the bones. And then we will move into the different cell types that are found in the bone tissue. So now let's talk about these two types of bone tissue, that is the compact bone and the spongy bone. And to do that, again, we have our friend, the long bone that is the femur. And now I'm going to show you two different type of bone tissues. Here you find this one, yeah, that represent 20%. Yeah, that is the spongy bone. And why? Because it had the structure of a sponge, yeah, that has all these tiny irregular cavities where you will find the red bone marrow, yeah, so there you're going to produce blood cells, and all these structures are called trabeculae. Okay, trabeculae. I will show it to you later. Okay, so first type of bone that is less dense, that is not very packed, is the spongy bone. Now, while I change in color, hopefully I was able to change in color. I'm going to try to go to blue. You see, okay, it worked. You have here the diaphysis, and in the diaphysis you have this compact bone here. Yeah, compact bone that represent 80% of these long bones. And this compact bone is much more robust, much more heavier, and is located in the diaphysis. And different from the spongy bone that has trabeculae, here you're going to find osteons. And we are going to talk about osteons in the following slides. It's composed of many components. But right now, what I want that you remember is that the osteon is the structural unit of the compact bone. Okay, so now let's go and summarize all the things that I told you, and later in the following slide, I will talk more in detail about these two bones. So I told you that there are two histological subtypes of bone tissue. One is the compact bone and the other one is the spongy bone. They differ in their density, so how packed they are. So the spongy bone is lighter, the compact bone is much heavier. The compact bone has this structure that I want that you write it down that is called osteons, that is the structural units of bones, of compact bones, and the spongy bone, instead of osteon, has this structure called trabeculate. Yeah, and there you can see that spongy bone have different names. Sorry, so it's also known as trabecular uh, trabecular bone. Now in the following slide, I'm going to zoom in with a schematic in the bone, so it's much easier to you to see the trabeculae and the osteons. So here you can see in this diagram the two key structures that I wanted to show you, the osteon and the trabeculae. Okay, so in the osteon, here you have one osteon explained in a lot of detail, so that it has all these other structures that right now they are not important. Yeah, and what is important is that there is not one, there are multiple osteons. Yeah, so you will have another one here, another one here, and another one here. Yeah, and all of them are tied together to form what appear to be a solid mass. Yeah. On the other hand, if you go and see the trabeculae, that is this structure that is found in the spongy bones, is the opposite. Yeah, you don't have a solid mass. What you have there is small and irregular cavities that contain the red bone marrow, that is where the blood cells are going to originate. So again, no need to focus on right now in all the names. What I want that you remember is that the osteon is the structural unit of the compact bones, and all of them are tightly together to form what appear to be a solid mass. Yeah, and remember that the spongy bone is formed by these trabeculae, and the trabeculae are just small and irregular cavities that contain the red bone marrow. Here I wanted to talk about the functions. So while the compact bone, as is the strongest one, this will be good for protection as well as support. The spongy bone, as is less heavy and less compact, it will be mainly for support. And remember, the spongy bone has different names. So for example, in your textbook, generally they call it trabecular. So we already talked about the different sections of the bones. We talked about the type of bones. Now here we're going to talk about the different components, but of the extracellular matrix of the bones. And remember, bones contain abundant extracellular matrix that surrounds widely separated cells, and there are three main components. So I'm going to try to use different colors to show you the three components. So the first one are minerals. Yeah, so they represent 55%. Here you can see it in purple, and you need to remember this one. This hydroxyapatite, that is just crystals that are the combination of calcium phosphate and calcium hydroxide. Okay, so this is the first component. The second component, let's put it here second, we'll put it here in orange, that are proteins, in particular collagen. So they are 30%, and is the second most abundant component. And the third component, I don't have gray, but I will put it with black, that it will be the molecule of water, that is represent around 15% of the extracellular matrix. So just to summarize, remember that bone contain abundant extracellular matrix that surround widely separated cells. And there are three main components that we talk: water, 50%, collagen, 30%, and different crystallized mineral salts, salt. And the most important is this hydroxyapatite that is formed by calcium phosphate and calcium hydroxide. So here, just to finish, I already talked about that, but I wanted to show you a slide so it's much clearer. There are two different types of marrow. You have the red bone marrow and the yellow bone marrow. The red bone marrow will be located here in the epiphysis, and it will be in the region when you find also the spongy bones, and is the site of production of all blood cells, including the red blood cells, white blood cells, and the platelets. Finally, the yellow bone marrow is located in the diaphysis, yeah, and it has a completely different function. The function is not to produce cells, is to store, yeah, uh, triglycerides. Yeah, so it's very important for the storage and release of energy. And in addition to that, it has some function in the shock absorption. Okay, so remember there's two bone marrows located in different regions, and they have different functions. So in this and in the following slides, we will be talking about these four cell types of the bone tissue. And here you can see these four type of cells, and we are going to divide it into two groups. Yeah, so here you have the first group, and here you have the second group. In the first group, you have three type of cells. First, the osteoprogenitor cell. Second, the osteoblast cell. And third, the osteocyte cells. And the osteoprogenitor cell is going to produce the osteoblast cell, and the osteoblast cells is going to end up forming the osteocyte cell. So in the osteoblasts, the osteoprogenitor cell, what happened is that this cell, the main function of this one is division. Yeah, so this one is the one that create new cells. This is not having anything related to the bone formation at this point. It's just a stem cell. So here you're going to have a stem cell that is called osteoprogenitor cell. And the other two cells, the osteoblasts and the osteocytes, are not dividing. Yeah. So here what happened is that the main function of the osteoblast, it will be to secrete the extracellular matrix. So it will be creating new bones. So you're going to increase bone formation. And how? You start creating all the minerals, and you're secreting all these minerals. Later, you calcified all that region, yeah, all this region, and that you isolate yourself and in a structure called a lacune, yeah, and later we are going to talk about this lacune, and you suffer a transformation, and now the osteoblasts become into an osteocyte. And this one, instead of increasing the amount of bones, they are going to maintain the amount of bones. Okay, so osteoblasts create new, osteocytes maintain them. Okay, and now we're going to, so all these three, as I repeat you, from a mesenchymal cell that has a fibroblast look like, that is the osteoprogenitor, there's a series of events that end up forming the osteoblast and the osteocyte. However, the second group of cells, they don't come from these osteoprogenitor cells, yeah? They come from a different origin, and in this case, it comes from white blood cell lineage, so from other type of cells. So these two type of cells have different origin, and the other function that they have is that this cell called osteoclast, instead of increasing the amount of bones, yeah, like the osteoblast, or maintaining the amount of blood, this one is going to destroy, yeah, it's going to break down and reabsorb the bones. For that reason, there should be a balance between the osteoblast and the osteoclast, yeah, so these two cells will be competing, yeah. Well, a new bone is going to form, another one has to disappear, and this is how, for example, fractures are cured. Yeah, so you need to, there should be a dynamic. One will create one section, one will destroy the other section. Now in the following slides, I'm going to show you a little bit more schematics and give you more details, but I think this is the main idea of the four cell types. So just to summarize before I moved into the other section, remember that I told you there are four cell types. Um, each one has a unique function. So one works as a stem cell, one produce the bone, this one maintain the bone, and this one destroy and reabsorb the bone. Yeah, and later I will show you they also have different locations. So here you have again your three different cells that we describe of the first group. So the first cell is the osteogenic cell, that if you remember is the stem cell that is an specialized, as we said here. And here the location, if you see, is in the periosteum, or also it can be found here close to the marrow. Yeah. So it will be located in those parts in which the bone has to grow. In a similar location, it will be located the second group, the osteoblast. So here, let me put the arrow here again. So periosteum, and here again, more in the endosteum. So new bones need to grow. So they secrete the matrix and they are responsible for the deposition. Now, as the bone grows, they form the osteoclast, the osteocytes, and these one are mature cells that are trapped in a lacune, if you remember. So they are not going to be, so here you see them here, and they show it that they are not in the borders, in the extreme of the bones. They will be here in the middle of the bones where all the osteons are located. Yeah. So um, so these osteocytes are located in different regions of the osteoprogenitor cells and the osteoblast. And finally, I forgot to tell you this piece of information, that if bone damage occur, the osteocytes can also have the potential to differentiate back into osteoblast to repair the wound. So we have the stem cells that are repairing that. We have the osteoblasts that are creating cells. We have the osteoclasts that are absorbing, and they also have this differentiation. Yeah, so they can go back to produce new bones. So we already talked about this first group of cell types, and we talk about the function and the location. Now we're going to talk about the second group, that is the osteoclasts, and I told you that they are in charge of bone remodeling by reabsorbing the bone, and to do that they use an enzyme. Okay, and key thing here, they are going to be on the surface of the bone. So this is, let me go with the arrow here. So the osteoclasts are going to be located here, yeah, in the surface of the bone. Yeah, so let's write surface here. They can also be located in places where you find an injury, because the bones need to be healed, so they need to reabsorb some part of the bones that they could be dead, and new ones they have to appear. And also they can be located in regions or when the bones are needed, yeah, where they are not needed anymore. So in these three regions, you can find the osteoclast. And sorry, finally, I forgot to tell you one last thing that I found interesting. So here you see mononucleate, 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 and here the osteoclast is the only one that is a polynucleate cell. Okay, so with this, we finish the different cell types of the bones. So now please fill out this table. Tell me what is the function and location of each one of these four cell types. So you can stop the video, and if not, I will give you the answer right away. So just to remind you, here, let's start color coding this. So here you have the osteogenic cells that are in charge of developing the osteoblast. So it will be this one, and they're going to form this one. The second one, oh, and they are located in the deep layers of the periosteum and the marrow. The second one, it will be the osteoblasts that are this one that are in charge of the bone formation. So they are going to increase the amount of bones, and they are located in grown portion of the bones like the periosteum and the endosteum. Uh, then we have the osteocytes, that is this type of cells that are, so I put an equal symbol here because they are in charge of maintain the mineral concentration of the matrix. Yeah, they are not, remember the only cell that is able to divide is the osteogenic cell from these three. So these one are not going to create more bones, they are just going to maintain it. And they are in traps in the matrix in the lacuna. Finally, let's put this one in purple, is the other cell type. There's the osteoclast that you can find here. And in the osteoclast is in charge of the bone reabsorption. So let's put an arrow going in the opposite direction. So if you remember, this one create bones, this one maintain the bones, and this one remove the bones. And these are located in the bone surface, also at size of the bones that are old, that are injured, or that are not eaten anymore. Okay, and with this section, so we hopefully now it's very clear the four cell types of the bone.